Hello, welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast here on YouTube. Do hit thumbs up, do hit subscribe to the channel, and make sure you get into the comments and get involved in this video. I have asked dozens of Newcastle United fans on social media to get in touch with me and ask them 4 key questions ahead of the new season. And in this video, you're going to see them answer those questions. We had 2 on Alexander Isak. Firstly, their opinion on the way that he has behaved. Secondly, do they think he will indeed leave, most probably for Liverpool? The third question was about the transfer window so far, and the fourth question was what needs to happen in the remaining weeks of the transfer window to make sure Newcastle United are fully equipped for the new season ahead. So sit back, enjoy. This is the viewpoint of some fans from across the globe. We've got people from the United States, Australia, and of course here on Tyneside and across the UK as well. Thank you to everyone who's got involved. It's been a pleasure looking through your Vox Pops. Enjoy the video.
How do I feel about Alexander Isak's behaviour? Well, angry because he's let Eddie Howe down, who's shown such faith in him and elevated his game. His teammates, because you can't do nothing without your teammates on the pitch. And they're such a tight-knit group. And supporters, we've shown him such love since he's been here and done tifos for him. I'm frustrated because after winning the Carabao Cup and qualifying for the Champions League, he's tainted what should have been such a massive window. And also disappointed. This behaviour is completely out of the blue. There's been no indication he's wanted to leave. He's been in the photo shoot for the club's third top. And yesterday's news, yes, it was agent-driven, but he's his own man. He can think for himself. And his behaviour has just been completely unacceptable. He's burnt lots of bridges, saying he won't reintegrate himself. And he's played his last game for the club. I just feel there's no way back. Look, I've got no problem with ambition. Liverpool's the biggest club in the country, but he could have handled this so much better.
It's completely and absolutely unacceptable, unprofessional as well. I understand that a career in football is short, and somebody with his talent wants to play at the highest level for the highest wage possible. And there are ways to go about achieving that, but using the methods that he has, that in my opinion is not the way to go about it. I just can't see any way back for him into the squad if he does stay. I think he's just burnt so many bridges, not just with the fans like us, but also with his teammates. I just can't see a way back where he's going to perform at a level that we need him to.
I think the feeling for me is this a shock, a sense of shock, a sense of disappointment. You know, I didn't see this coming from him, his character and how he was, so I've obviously misjudged his character. I feel a little bit let down and disappointed. You know, we've seen all these displays, all these, you know, these showings that we've done to just make sure that he knows that he's loved here, that we all adore him, we all appreciate everything that he does. And again, I don't think, like, I'm not against him getting the move. I understand that he's, you know, he's leveled up, he's maybe at a better level than where we are currently, but I still think the way you need to behave and conduct yourself is in a professional way, and I don't think that he's done that. I think that's the point that frustrates me and makes me feel a bit let down by his behaviour, especially more towards the fans and, you know, the management and his teammates, because at the end of the day, he's came to Newcastle, we've helped him get to this level now, and I think he should show us a bit of respect in doing that, regardless of whether there was agreements made or whatever behind these closed doors. I think you still have to behave in a professional way, and that's not something that he's done.
Taking into consideration Alexander Isak's behaviour has been really difficult as a Newcastle fan, because we never expected someone of this calibre, especially with the service that he's given us, to behave the way he has done. But at the same time, I understand that he may want to leave us to go on to do better and to further his career, but there is a way of doing that. And the fact that he's conducted himself in such a poorly fashion, not even giving any consideration to the dedication that not only the staff have given him, but also us fans, is a really bitter pill to swallow. And there's ways he could have conducted himself a lot better, such as potentially written out a statement to the fans or to the club saying that this is how things are for him and it's no reflection on the club or the fans, but it just feels it's the right time to move on. Or he could have at least maybe handed in a transfer request, so then at least he's doing things the right way. But at the moment, his behaviour has been nothing short of disgrace. And it kind of brings into question, do we ever really knew, or have we ever really known the real as Alexander Isak, which is really worrying for me as a Newcastle fan.
I mean, there's only one way you can look at it. Isak's behaviour has been really, really poor from what we know. Obviously, not travelling on the Asia tour, travelling to Spain on his own. Obviously, he's not in the squad at the moment training, but that's probably the right thing because we're playing Liverpool on the second game week. Would you want him training with the main squad, knowing tactics of what we're going to do in that game? I'm not so sure. He clearly feels like he's probably hit a bit of a ceiling at Newcastle, and I can kind of see why, really, because there's always PSR. It's always PSR rumblings. I know, but not this summer. But there will be, and always will be. So I think that has stunted growth in some ways. You just look at the big six teams right now, and they are buying and buying and buying and buying. So it is hard for us to compete. Does Isak see that and go, I'm not going to win big trophies because Newcastle can't do what they want to do in the transfer market?
Disappointed, frustrated at his behaviour. I always thought he would be the person that was sold. I thought at one point we would cash in on him, would reinvest in the squad. I just didn't think it would be this summer. I thought he would give us another year of Champions League following a cup final victory, and I certainly didn't think he would agitate for a move. Obviously we were wrong. I think there's something to be said for we were the club that gave him the platform that he currently has, that took a chance on him for a lot of money after a fairly poor last summer in Spain. I guess the Newcastle fans are the fans that have adored him. Had the flags, had the banners. It just leaves a really sour taste. I think that this is how it's probably going to end. I think it's unnecessary. I think there's something about being interested in other moves, but I think at the same time there's something about being professional and honouring the contract you signed. Him and his agent were the people that signed a contract without a break clause. There was no release clause inserted in that contract. Therefore, I don't necessarily think he has a leg to stand on. But yeah, disappointed.
How would I rate the transfer window so far? It's so difficult to judge this because of the Isak situation just tainting everything. But we've definitely done the opposite of what Eddie wanted when he talked at the last game of the season about getting deals done early. I think someone must have misheard him and said let's get deals done late because everything seems to be coming at the last minute. But I think where we are now in terms of bodies through the door, I'd say we're probably a 6 out of 10 for the window. If we can get the Ramsey deal and the Wissa deal over the line, then I think probably an 8 out of 10.
5 out of 10. I think the business that they have conducted has been good business. Elanga on the right wing is terrific. I am very excited about that signing. Even Ramsdale in goal, I know I'm probably in the minority, but I think that is a great signing. Certainly lowers the age profile of the keepers, having someone still in their 20s between the sticks, as well as no one can deny Ramsdale and Pope combined is going to be a lot stronger than a Dubravka and Pope combined. So I think they did good back there. And the gentleman from AC Milan that just signed a few moments ago, very excited about him as well. I think he's going to be a great addition. Again, lowers that age profile of the center backs, and I could see him being a good long-term replacement for Fabian Schär. So 5 out of 10 out of this point.
I think the window so far has been a mess. We've been made to look very silly by certain players. I won't go into details or names, but it is picking up. Wissa looks there or thereabouts. Chow obviously signed now. Elanga, great signing. I know it's probably off topic, but I love what we're doing in the academy with our youth recruitment. Overall, I'd probably give it a 6.5 out of 10.
How do I rate our window so far? Well, I'd say it's a 6. That's based on us being ambitious, but the bigger clubs with better revenues have beaten us to our top target. It's not looked good. But Aaron Ramsdale, low risk, high reward loan option. He's a good shot stopper and looks more assured with the ball at his feet than Pope. Alanga, frightening pace, addresses the right wing problem. You got Malik Chow, not seen too much of him, but you must be good to play for Milan. He's 6'4", good in the air. Technically sound on the ball and pacey. He's Shaw's successor. Jacob Ramsey, he offers something different to Joe Linton's brutality. He's more technically sound. He can carry the ball. He's an excellent footballer. I need players an 8 or a 10. Johan Wisaf will get him. 19 non-penalty goals last season, so he'll be an excellent replacement for Wilson. But I just can't rate this window above a 7, even if we do get new strikers in. Because even after all the carry-on with Isak, taking his quality out the team drops it massively. So while we will improve the squad depth, it will remove a lot of quality in the team.
I think I would give it a 6 at the minute. I think I'm looking at the striker now. You know, we've lost Wilson. Obviously, Isak's not even training. Whether he goes or not, we're not sure. So I don't actually think we'll have really an out-and-out top quality striker in the squad at all now. We've obviously got Asula coming through, but I don't think he's, you know, from what I've seen in pre-season, I'm not confident that he's ready to perform at that level yet. So for me, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, if we could just get, you know, 2 strikers in and maybe I think we need some cover in the central midfield area, because we've got Joe Linton and Bruno and Tonali and Miley, and, you know, Willock's obviously constantly getting injured, so we're quite light in midfield as well. So I think if we could bring a couple of strikers in the midfield line, I would give it a 10, but at the minute I would say 6. But I just think we need to be getting these deals done. You know, I keep saying it all the time that we're linked with players, and then, you know, I seem to be messing around for a couple of weeks, and then before you know it, they've gone elsewhere. We need to identify a player and just pounce as quickly as we can. You know, this Wissa thing, I've been seeing it for ages, that Brentford are waiting for this and Bournemouth need to sign this, and then it'll domino effect. Is there no other targets we could be going for during this time? Is there nobody else we could have brought in before the start of the season now? We're still just waiting with no proper striker on the team. So that's why I kind of give it a high score. I even think a 6 is quite high considering how poorly we've done so far.
I rate the window very highly. At the moment, you know, Jacob Ramsey and Johan Wisser look like they're going to come in. So not only do we have 2 England international goalkeepers fighting for a number 1 spot, we have Fabian Schär's long-term replacement in Malik Chow, German international, of course. Our right wing is now future-proofed for a long time. We have a wonderful replacement upgrade on Joe Willock. I think Jacob Ramsey could fill in and deputise when Joe Linton doesn't play. He's big, he's aggressive, and he can carry the ball. Wisser is a great replacement for Callum Wilson, something we've been crying out for a couple of years. The only missing piece of the puzzle is a replacement for Alexander Isak, and unless we can get someone in with a proven track record, a very good replacement, then yeah, it would polish off a fantastic window for us, in my opinion.
I would rate the transfer window probably 7 out of 10. Based on, we wanted a new goalkeeper. We've got that. Yes, it's a loan deal. It's not necessarily our first choice, but we've brought in a very good goalkeeper who is determined to kind of prove himself, especially with it being a World Cup year. We've confirmed the signing of Malik Chow, and that kind of covers our right centre-back option that we needed to cover to help Fabian Schär. And we have signed Anthony Alanga, who has ended the search for a right winger for about 4 years. And all 3 of those are of massive quality in my opinion. Obviously you've got a couple of youngsters that we've brought in, but they won't necessarily affect the first team, although Park was very impressive during pre-season, so it would be nice to see what he does. But yeah, it's 7 out of 10 for me at the minute. I think we do need another midfielder. Obviously Jacob Ramsey is reported to be close to joining, which is a very good sign. And I believe that we need another striker. Obviously we're looking to get Wisser. It looks like the ball might be moving for the kind of chain reaction with Bournemouth and Brentford. So hopefully we can get Wisser in. and then it depends what happens with Isak. If Isak goes, we need another striker. If Isak doesn't go and decides to apologise and it gets integrated back into the side, then happy days. But Wissa is a very, very solid signing.
Well, look, it's a funny one because I think if you park the Isak stuff, I don't think we've had a bad transfer window. At the beginning of the window, we needed 5 players. We needed a centre-back, a midfielder, a right winger, a goalkeeper and a second striker. We're well on our way to filling all those positions, you know, with more to come. I think what the Isak stuff has done is it's thrown a massive spanner in the works because it's made us go for players who we wouldn't have been going for in this window. Like, there's no way we'd be going for Benjamin Sesko. There's no way we'd have been going for Ekitike. I think we've had to go for them because our hand has been forced. And then it obviously makes us look a bit silly because other clubs have come in, offered them more money, and we've missed out on them. But I think, like, people keep going on about we've missed out on this, we've missed out on this. Like, the clubs are always going to have options. They're always going to have, like, different options for different positions. So it's not a case of going, oh, we didn't get Mbeumo, but they've settled for Elanga. I think it could have been either of them. And clearly they've looked at Mbeumo and it's gone, he wants a lot of money and he wants to come to Man U. Fine, okay. I think Elanga's a very good signing. I think he's going to be an excellent signing. I quite like Ramsdale. I think it's a no-brainer for me. Get him on loan. I think we needed a British goalkeeper. I think that's what the club wanted. There's not many out there. Ramsdale at one point in time was in the team of the year for Arsenal, who finished second in the league, and he was worth £24 million. I think he's a good goalkeeper. He's lost his way a little bit, but I think there's a player there. Chow's a good signing. Reading today that Ramsey could be on his way. I think he's an excellent player and just what we need. And if we get in a striker, then I think that's a very good window. And then obviously we'll just have to see what happens with the Isak situation. Right, do I think Isak will be sold before the transfer deadline? Yes, I think Isak will be sold. I think it's just going to be very difficult to keep a hold of a player who doesn't want to be here, especially a player who is going to cost over £100 million to whoever buys him. I think, look, if PSR wasn't a thing, wasn't kind of, this cloud hanging over us, that I wouldn't be surprised to see the owner say, look, we'll just sit. You can just sit and rot and then come to your senses. You've got 3 years left on your contract, but we're just not in a position where we can let that happen. I know City did it with Tevez, but they didn't have, PSR. So I just can't see us. I can't see us keeping a player who's unhappy. I do think there's a scenario where we sign one striker and he goes. I think we are clearly trying to get a replacement in for him, as well as a replacement for Callum Wilson. I can see a scenario where a week down the line we sign one striker and just say, right, look, we've got Asula, we've got Gordon, we've got £150 million that we can spend in January. Let's just let him go because he's just toxic. So yeah, with every day that passes, obviously there's a chance he stays, but I just think it's really difficult to keep a player who's clearly unhappy, who's gonna bring in a lot of money. So yes, I think he will go.
If we get a couple strikers in, yes. I feel that though if we only get one or none, he will not be sold. I think it'll be a slow reintegration process for him. Even if we just sign Wissa, I think Isak will stay and potentially go in the next transfer window in the winter. Tough to say right now, but like I said, I think we'd have to have a minimum of 2 strikers, as I don't think Asula is ready to be a backup striker. And Gordon, I don't think is an ideal striker right now either. I would still like to have him and Barnes rotate on the left with Elanga on the right. We'll see. As of right now, though, I don't see him being sold this window until we have the replacement.
I believe he will, but only once we find a suitable replacement, and that is becoming a harder task as the day goes on. Liverpool, I don't think, will stop at one bid. I think the second one will come in, especially as his camp will give them plenty of encouragement. So yes, I do think he'll go.
Unfortunately, I do think that he will be a Newcastle player come the end of the transfer window this summer. In my opinion, I just don't think that there are suitable options out there to replace him at this point in time. It's too late in the window. The Premier League kicks off in less than a week. they should have had this sewn up weeks ago if they were going to try and get a replacement. I understand they worked hard to get Ekitike and Sesko in. However, they didn't. So I just don't think that they're in a position to find another replacement of his quality or near his quality. So I think that he will be a player for Newcastle come the end of the window.
No, I don't. Two things need to happen. We need to have a replacement lined up, and that's looking increasingly unlikely as the window goes on because there just aren't the players out there that fit the brief. And Liverpool haven't made a proper offer yet. I think their first one was very much a sort of tentative, we're interested, and probably signalling more to Isak and his team that they're serious rather than thinking that they were going to have an offer accepted by the club for something like that. I keep hearing the phrase, Liverpool are waiting for encouragement from Newcastle. I'm sorry, we have a player that isn't for sale, so the onus is on Liverpool to offer encouragement to Newcastle. 150 million of them, in fact. And they seem to have very short memories, because it wasn't 7 years ago, I think they sold Coutinho to Barcelona for 140 million odd. And given the inflation in transfer activity since then, that's probably more like 180 million in today's money, and strikers are more expensive than midfielders. So, I think it's a fair price for us to put on the head of a player we don't want to lose. We should sell Isak on our terms, not his. I don't want to see us buying a striker for the sake of it. This Ollie Watkins rumour, which I don't think is going to happen anyway, is not the right one for us. We are obviously suffering from a bit of a vacuum of leadership within the boardroom. I wish we had a stronger voice at the club who would lay down the law a little bit and put Isak and his agents and Liverpool back in their boxes. Could you imagine how Marinakis, the Forest CEO, would have dealt with this in the same way as he did with the Gibbs-White situation? We need to be strong here because this sets a precedent for other players in the future. We aren't a club that will stand in the way of players that want to leave, but it has to be at the right time and for the right price. And at the moment, I just don't think it's going to happen.
See, for me, this is a really interesting one. In an ideal world, I think Newcastle should sell him. I don't think there's any point in having a player that doesn't want to be there. I think it's toxic. I think it's to the detriment of the rest of the squad. But I also think it's the first time that the ownership has been kind of significantly challenged by a bigger club, or by a club with certainly more financial power. And I think, for me, at this point, the opportunity to keep Isak and I guess to make a bit of a stand is more lucrative than cashing in on him. I think the minute Newcastle buckle to the pressure of the media and to the pressure of the likes of Liverpool, I think it becomes apparent on the clubs that almost push overs, and I think that's the worry. I think Newcastle have a lot to gain by kind of standing the ground, unofficially setting a price, and if that price is not met, then I guess Alexander Isak stays at Newcastle. How that would play out, I don't know, but I think Newcastle hold all the cards. I think he's got 3 years on a contract. Financially, it seems like Newcastle, are in a decent position. Assuming Newcastle bring in a couple of strikers, then I think they can afford to kind of let it play out. But I certainly don't think Newcastle should be backed into a corner by anyone, and I think allowing themselves to be sets a really dangerous kind of precedent for moving forward.
No, I don't, because I have maintained from the start of the transfer window that I genuinely don't believe Alexander Isak leaves Newcastle this transfer window. I don't think Newcastle will sell him unless someone offers the reported 150 million that Newcastle want for him. And I think as a matter of principle, as a matter of kind of morals, I just don't think we should let him go, because it sets a precedent for players who want to come, sign a contract and then just throw their toys out the pram and want to leave. You've signed a contract for X amount of years. You will honour that contract unless we get a bid suitable that we want to sell you for. And the way he's gone about it is disgusting in my opinion. So yeah, personally I'd let him rot. I'd put him in the reserves until he puts his big boy pants on and says, I'm sorry, then no, I don't think we should sell him. I don't think he will be sold.
Right. What do I think needs to happen in the remainder of the window? That's a tricky one. Again, like, if this Isak stuff was sorted out, you'd be saying we need one striker and a midfielder, depending on if Ramsey comes in. But it's the whole Isak situation, isn't it? You cannot have any rotten apples in, so we need to sign an Isak replacement. I don't think there's anyone out there, personally, who can come in, be like that kind of plug-and-play striker who's going to hit the ground running. I think if we get Wissa in, I think he's an excellent addition. I think he's exactly what we need. But obviously we lose him for the African Cup of Nations. I don't think he'd be an Isak replacement. Obviously not long term, because he's 29 years old next month. I think, like, the ceiling of the first 11 has been really high for a long time. I think we've got a fantastic first 11. Outside of that, the floor is pretty low. I think what this transfer window is doing is it is raising that floor. But we do desperately need a striker in. I was at a couple of the pre-season games, and crikey, like, Asula's not there yet. I love Gordon, but I didn't think he's a central attacker. So what needs to happen is we need a striker. We need at least minimum one striker in. And if they decide to let Isak go, there's part of me that thinks, do we wait? Do we keep that money? Do we go with the striker we've got in? Say we've got Wissa in and we just go with him for the season. It's a risk, but we've got Gordon and Asula, who, as I've just said, I'm contradicting myself, but they can play through the middle. But then we get to January, Wissa goes to African Cup of Nations, we've got £150 million-ish burning a hole in my pocket then. It's tricky because, like, clubs are going to know that we've got the money and we want to spend it. But to be honest with you, there's always a Newcastle tax attached to transfers these days. And there's not many players, as I said earlier, out there who will just come in and be like a plug-and-play player. So, personally, I'd be going out and just throwing money at Ferran Torres. That's who I'd be going for. I think he's fantastic. And I think he's someone who, he knows the Premier League. He had a great season last season. He's clearly out of favour at Barcelona. Would he come? I'm not sure, but I think, like, we could do a lot worse there.
What do I still think needs to happen in the remainder of this window? Well, we've got enough depth in the goalkeeping department, defence, both wings, and I think midfield as well. I'd like to go for Leicester's El Khanous. He looks a real player, the Moroccan, if there's enough wiggle room in the budget. But I think we're now going to concentrate on getting two strikers in, because there's a gaping hole at the top of the pitch. Once Bournemouth get the replacement for Ouattara, he'll go to Brentford. Then Wissa will get his dream move, which he said he wants, to us. And you get to play in the Champions League, and he brings 19 non-penalty goals last season. And yes, he's going to AFCON, but I think there's a real player in there. And look, got to accept, we've just got to get rid of Isak once we get a replacement. We're going to lose his quality, but the bigger picture is we'll get more squad depth ahead of 4 competitions. Jackson, I'm not really keen on him, but if we get a loan deal, low risk, high reward, if Eddie Howe coaches him to a better level. Agahawa I'd like, but I don't think we'll commit £80 million to a 21-year-old.
What do I think needs to happen in the remaining window? Well, the obvious one's a striker, right? Whether it's Wissa or we find a way to get a second striker as well, potentially sell Isak. I would like another midfielder, but Ramsey could do that as well. I think one sneaky one that maybe some supporters forget about is I would like to have an additional right back, maybe a right back that can play on the left side as well. We have Hall and we have Tino and we have Trips, but Trips is aging, and we don't have much depth behind him either. And with additional competition in Europe and more difficult matches, I don't know if we can rely on the likes of our current bench. So I'd like to see one other be brought in to help with that depth and that support.
In the remaining weeks of the window, I think we need to have, of course, Alex's replacement lined up, but it has to be the right one. It can't be a knee-jerk decision. It needs to be one that's right for the football club. I do think a creative midfield player could really do us one. Someone with a bit of trickery, like Alcanus, or someone of that similar profile. Preferably, I'd love a Lucas Paqueta reunion with Bruno Guimaraes, but I don't think the club are too interested in that. Potentially another centre-back for me. I don't think Sven Botman will be a long-term player for Newcastle. His injury worries are just too concerning. Jamal Lascelles, as much as I love him, I think as he comes back season on season, I think he's going to start to deteriorate soon. So I think we need to future-proof that. Fullbacks are good, keepers are good, midfielders are fine, wingers are fine. So yeah, just one incoming as a striker, one incoming as a real creative number 10. I think Thiago Almada would have been a great signing before he went to Atletico, but there we go. Amir Richardson could be a lovely addition to the squad too.
What needs to happen the rest of the window? I would say we need at least 3 bodies in. First of which being a center midfielder, with Longstaff leaving, and then the injury records of both Joe Willock and Joe Linton doesn't fill me with confidence that those players can play game in, game out over the course of 4 competitions all season. So just for rotation and depth, we certainly need one more center midfielder in.
I think what needs to happen for the remaining weeks of the transfer window is certainly sort of the Isak situation, because that's becoming more and more of a burden to the club than it needs to be. I feel like even if there's an opportunity for him to come back into the first team squad, he also obviously first of all earn that right, but he has to also make a very big and sincere apology to the club, even if it's internally, it doesn't have to be to the fans, and obviously make sure that he does everything he can to ensure that he's got his head in the game. But if and only if we get the right bidding for him, i.e. £150 million at least, then of course we need to let him go. I think also we need to make sure that we've got our squad as strong as it possibly can, and even if it means that we may have to park some of our ideas of getting more players in now, that's something we should do rather than just spending money for spending money's sake, because we don't want to be in a situation whereby in January we could potentially get players in, but because we overspent or try to get as many players in as possible this window, that then scuppered our chances of getting players in the January window. So I think what we're doing now is being very obviously diligent and trying to make sure we're measured in our approach, which is great, but we need to make sure that we continue that process. And I think what's most important going forward is not only do we get the backroom staff available and ready for things of doing transfers like this, or doing transfers full stop, but also at the same time making sure that when we're getting players in, that they see us as their choice rather than just as a priority or a stepping stone.
What needs to happen between now and the end of the window? I think if we consider what the objectives were for the summer, we wanted a right-sided attacker to challenge Murphy. We wanted a centre-back. We've got both of those. We wanted a goalkeeper. We've got one of those. And I think Ramsdale will actually prove to be a better signing than most of us expect. We wanted a Wilson replacement, which looks like it's happening, although the Wissa chain looks like buying a house at the moment, isn't it? You found the house you want to move to, but there's loads of people ahead of them that haven't bought their house yet. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I'm hopeful that the Wissa deal can come in. We also wanted some midfield depth, and we're looking likely now that Ramsey's going to come through the door, which I think will be a tremendous signing, particularly given Joe Willock's injury record, Joe Linton's injury record. I think we definitely need 1, if not 2 more bodies in midfield. I'd be keen to perhaps explore a sort of number 10 position, so potentially maybe a Kanous, El Kanous from Leicester, who obviously is available apparently at a reasonable price with a release clause. We've also got Jack Rodoni from Coventry, who had a good season last year under Frank Lampard, and that potentially could be another sort of quote-unquote bargain signing. Hayden Hackney from Borough as well. So these are sort of not expensive signings that we could do to add some much-needed creativity and squad depth, particularly given the sort of position we find ourselves in occasionally, where we're trying to play against a low block and we just need someone with the keys to unlock a defence. And then possibly maybe even a defensive midfielder, because I don't think we've seen the best out of Tonali yet. I think in a way you're sort of slightly hamstringing him by having him as the deepest lying midfielder. He plays a much more advanced role for Italy, has a lot more goal involvements and sort of creative output there. So I actually think by getting someone that can sit deeper in midfield, to cover in the event of Tonali's injury. I know they tried Miley there in pre-season, but I think that will really unlock a bit of creativity from Tonali that we haven't seen yet. I think there's a lot more to come there. So I think if I was to be fussy, I would say another midfielder in addition to Ramsey, so 2 midfielders, particularly because Longstaff's gone. And then obviously in the Isak situation, I think the narrative that came out this week about him never wanting to play for the club again, I think you'd expect him and his team to say nothing less at this point because they're trying to engineer a move. If that move doesn't happen and the window shuts and he's still a Newcastle player, then I think he'll have no choice but to be reintegrated. And as much as it pains me to say this, at 75% Alexander Isak is still an unbelievable striker. So I think the situation could well be that a Wissa as a backup is all we'll need. He'll have to, carry the burden in the early weeks and months of the season as hopefully we reintegrate Isak for another season.